So you see a lot of people bench, like this, and they come and they bring their, bar way high on their chest. Well, you don't row like that. Nobody does, any kind of row like that. You row like this, where that's a good bar position for me. Everybody's going to be a little bit different on them, depending on your bench style. Some people want to bring it a little bit higher, and then some people, if you have a whole lot of leg drive, like Spud, Spud always has a whole lot of leg drive. Like he'll push himself off the back of the bench when he's, really pushing hard. He'll bring it down to the top part of his stomach. And that's kind of where I bring, a lot of my raw benches, or my shirted benches especially. My raw bench is a little bit higher, kind of in between my chest and the top of my stomach. So everybody's a little bit different, but the bar path, it should be a rowing motion to where you can use that back to help pull everything together.
Same for me. I just bring it to right there at right at my sternum area. That's pretty much where I row. If I was to do a bent over barbell row, it's just a tad bit higher than where I bring that barbell. The barbell hits me right about there, so when I bench, I come to about right there. That allows me to, again, keep that good straight line that we were talking about earlier with our hand placement. I know that I can still keep my back as tight as I need to, and it creates a nice straight line from when I leave the chest to my ending position. Because, of course, as we all know, fastest way from point A to point B, straight line. And that's another thing that we have to worry about with bar path as well. When it took me a long time to figure this out. When I first started benching, I had some of those guys that were telling me that, to really be able to use those lats, you need to unrack it and think of kind of bringing it down in the C motion, and then when you come up, you're going to drive it back. Now, in theory, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. Kind of. But, again, fastest way from point A to point B is a straight line. The other downside of that is the more that I got into the prehab, rehab, and mobility stuff, I started looking at it from the mechanics of a body. What is going on with my shoulder as I create that C motion? There's a lot of stuff in there going on that's not natural. And again, we want to keep the body in as close to a natural state as we can to keep it as safe as we can. So if you watch from the side, if I'm trying to do that C motion, as soon as I come off my chest, look what happens with my shoulder. I'm cranking this way, and I'm driving. What ends up happening is I'm driving that humerus head into the shoulder like this, and then it just scrapes. If I keep it to where I'm in a good neutral position, this is what goes on the whole time. Look, as little motion as possible is the best thing for any lift. Exactly. So again, just like with hand position, your squat stance, all that stuff. Bar path, as far as where you want to touch, that's another thing you can play around with a little bit. Find that money spot for you, that spot that as soon as you touch that spot and you go to come off that chest, it's just boom, it's flying up there. So again, mess around with it, there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen some people that the best spot for them, and I know that there's no way on God's green earth it could work for me, but it works perfect for them. They're like all the way right up here, basically right at their chest line. There's no way that could work for me. I'd be all over the place with the ball. But it works for them. So but you're never going to know until you mess around with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, everybody's a little bit different, and mine changes, believe it or not. I used to bench differently, and I had a pec tear. So I changed up my hand placement a little bit. I used to go a little bit wider, and now, I bring mine a little bit closer, and I bring my bar a little bit lower than I used to help incorporate, other muscle groups. Because still in the back of my brain, I'm like, I don't want my pec to blow, so I'm trying to utilize, more triceps, more lats, a little bit more shoulders, and take some of the load off of my chest. So it's one of those things, if you've got a pec strain or something like that, you may have to change where your bar position is. You may have to, a lot of people like starting right here, and I've got a lot of training partners that I hand them out, and I keep trying to lead them out because that's where you can set your lats in, but they want to start right, way up over their face, and then they have to come down, like Justin said, and you get that humerus rotation that's not what you're looking for. You want to get it set and then have it in a straight line.
Use your handoff people. That's what they're there for. It's just like having excuse me. You know, again, we talked about the squat not too long ago. It's just like having a spotter on the squat. You know, just because I have them there doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I'm cautious and I'm smart. It's the same with my handoff people on my bench press. I don't necessarily all the time need someone to hand off to me because the weight that I'm moving is heavy. It just helps. There's a couple things. You know, we just talked about back, you know, tightness and stuff like that, getting that back. You know, it's really hard for me sometimes once I get my back where I need it to be. It's hard for me to get that bar out of the rack. Where my handoff person can help me do that. I don't have to worry about, once I get here, I don't have to worry about extending that arm to get it out of the rack. But most importantly, as Dave was saying, it allows that handoff person to help guide me out there to where, boom, now those lats are locked in place. I can come down. I'm right there where I need to be. And then, boom.
Yep.
And then they can help me bring it back.
For
Again,
sure.
keep yourself as safe as you can. The last thing we want any of you to do, strain or pop a pec, tear up a lat or tricep, any of that stuff.
One little tidbit. You know, I was talking to Murph at TPS in Boston, and you know, he kind of looked at my form and he's like, "You're not even using the handoff guy." He's like, "You're getting out of position because you're doing all the work." Everybody loved handing off for me. They're like, "Dude, Dale's easy to hand off for. He does all the work." Well, that changed. Now everybody freaking hates me because when I get up onto the bar, you know, my elbows are in here, and I'm a shirted bencher, so I'm here, and I do a tricep extension. I'm not helping. I'm not pushing. I put my hands on the bar, and I do a tricep extension. I do this, and they hand it out to me.
That's how it should be.
Murph told me, he's like, your handoff guy should freaking hate you. And most of them do now. You know, I'm not easy to hand off for, but I get in a much better position and a much safer position to bench. So, you know, definitely utilize your handoff in your spotters. If you have to do a three-way because it's, you know, safer that way, or you can get a better handoff, use a three-way. You know, if you've got them there, utilize your training partners. Next up, we got elbow position, and that's one, you know, it's everybody's a little bit different. Where do you like to have your elbows?
Man, it is like you said. It's a little bit different one. At times there's a lot of controversy over it. But again, I like to keep mine neutral. I don't like to keep them super tucked in. I don't like to keep them flown out. Again, for me, it's that neutral position. I guess if you had to put an angle on it, I guess I'm at about a 35-degree angle or so. But again, for me, as I was saying earlier with the whole pushing the car thing, I'll walk up to something and see where my hands stop. This is about where I would be when I'm pushing something. My elbow's not in here. I'm not way out here. Your body's not gonna try setting you up to push something like this. It's gonna be right up in here. It's gonna allow you to utilize all the chest, pec major, pec minor, tricep, deltoids. Believe it or not, your back as well. So for me, it's just a slight tuck, not all the way in. Just a slight little bit of a tuck. What about where's yours at? Since you're a shirted bencher.
I'm a shirted bencher, so my elbows tuck in a little bit more. And also, you know, like I said, with having you know, I tore my pec major, I tuck a whole lot more because it takes some of that strain off of my pec tendon. You know, if you've got super huge, strong pecs, you know, you're probably comfortable out benching like this. You're probably missing some pounds on your bench because you're not utilizing a whole lot more muscles. But, you know, I'm nervous benching like this just because, you know, my pec popped off one time, so I've got more of a tuck. So when I'm benching, I'm more of a, you know, it's closer to my body. I feel when I'm coming down on a good bench, I feel my triceps scrape my lats a little bit, and it's almost like a little platform also. I've got more support out there. I've got something to push off of right there. Right there I've got, you know, fat lats hanging off, so my arms actually brush my lats when they come down. So I kind of, you know, tuck mine a little bit more. And that's kind of what we normally teach people is a tuck. And then after a while, if they're just sucking or they, you know, not comfortable with it, they're like, I'm not going to tuck, or they find their, you know, their degree of tuck, however much they want to do. But we never, nobody in our gym benches like this. We throw them out. That doesn't work.
No, that's a good way to get some injuries.
Yeah.
Especially if you're moving a maximal load. A couple more things about elbows. See this course most commonly with a lot of the raw lifters out there. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it seems like sometimes some of the raw lifters are afraid to admit their weaknesses on bench press. They're okay admitting weaknesses on squat. They're okay admitting weaknesses on deadlift, but when it comes to that bench, it's like everybody. So I don't know if it's a macho ego thing or what. But if you are a raw bencher, and if I'm standing over the top of you watching you bench, and it looks like this, you have some weak points that need to be addressed. Otherwise, you are going to be looking at some serious injuries. You'll be looking at a very major pec minor tear, where you're going to be looking at a very, very horrible tricep separation and tear. Both of those are horrible surgeries. I do not recommend doing that to yourself unless you just like pain. Because there's a lot of ways that we can fix this. Some tricep extension work. Mess around with your hand positioning a little bit. Keeping your back tight. Maybe re-looking at, see, Sipsy doesn't even want, she's going to voice her opinion on this. She doesn't want you to get hurt. Mess around with your bar path a little bit. Maybe you have the bar up a little too high. Maybe you have the bar a little too low, and that's causing the elbow to flare out. But one of the reasons why this is such a bad thing to happen is if I'm keeping my body as tight as I can, and I'm wanting this range of motion, but what I'm getting is this, think about what's happening right up in here. Everything's as tight as could be. There's a certain way that those tendons, ligaments, and muscles are supposed to move. That's how we're trying to get them to move. And then when something happens that gets them off course, it stretches, puts them in awkward positions. That's what causes things to pop and tear. So maybe another thing that is real common with the elbow flare, and I tell a lot of people to address, to make sure that they address this as they're checking the hand position, back tightness, bar path, and things. Give your triceps some attention. Don't be afraid to go over and do some tricep extensions, some tricep push downs, skull crushers, you name it. When it comes to things like the bicep, the tricep, go into those muscle groups with the mindset of a bodybuilder. The most important thing to a bodybuilder is symmetry. As powerlifters, we have to have that symmetry as well. If I'm trying to get a good, strong bench, then I have to complement everything in that chest. So that means I have to work my triceps. I have to work my biceps. Take my word for it. I promise you, as a powerlifter, if once or twice a week you start adding in 3 to 4 sets, once or twice a week, to your bicep curls, you're going to notice a huge difference in your bench press. Also, the motion in which your elbow travels. What happens is as the chest and the tricep are working, the bicep as well as the back become your primary stabilizers. The stronger my bicep is, the stronger and better I am to stabilize the weight. So I'm able to keep everything set in place and able to keep everything as tight as I need to. So again, think symmetry. If I'm going for a big, strong chest, my back and my biceps need to be just as strong. So make sure you're working that stuff.
Okay. That sums it up. I'm not going to say anything more about that one. We'll move on to the next thing, which is bar speed. Bar speed, you hear a lot of people talk about it, and it can mean several different things. The main thing that we're talking about, well, it's two things. It's the speed that you move the bar down, and a lot of people have their different cadences. Whatever's going to be right for you, whatever's comfortable for you, as long as it doesn't change. What we see a lot of people do is, say they're, a 430 pound bencher, okay? So they hit 315, that's a normal warm up, they're hammering or whatever. They hit, 405, and they come down and they, hit it pretty hard. They're comfortable that way, they're confident, so they just bring it down. And then they get to 430, which is around their max, and then they forget how to bench. They're like, oh shit, I've got to stop this weight. I've got to fight it. And they use all their energy to stop the weight instead of just bringing it down like a normal bench and then pressing it back up. Well, you're using all that stored up energy to stop it. You don't have anything left to press it. So, I mean, we see it a lot. And the same thing with the squat, and not so much for the deadlift because obviously you can't do that, but people would do it if they could. But when you take a max weight, don't change it. Change your mindset. It's going to be heavy. Just get it down there. Your body remembers how to press it. You're either going to press it or you're not. But you're definitely not going to press it if you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I've got to stop it. You're done. You're not going to get it.
It's the same principle as putting the brakes on your squat, like you were saying. If you're going for a big heavy squat and you're going as slow as molasses on your descent, then you're burning all your energy. You're not going to be able to explode out of that hole. It's the same thing with my bench. If I burn all my energy on bringing that bar to my chest, then by the time I do get it to my chest and wait for my press command, I'm done. I don't have any more energy left. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that we think that on a max load, we don't want you to go in and be like, well, Justin and Dale said that I can't go slow on this, so as soon as your hands off for you just let it just
bombs away.
Drop. Again, back to the whole thinking of a row. Think about how if you're doing a really heavy row, how fast are you going to be moving that bar? Are you going to be bent over going, trying to get that bar up to you? Or are you going to have a nice, even...
A good pull. Yep.
It's the same thing. So again, if you have to use that row command, think of that row. How fast are you going to move that bar when you're going for a heavy row? Because the most important part of the bench isn't from handoff to the chest. It's from the chest to the ending position. I don't care how beautiful you look on the way down. If you can't get it off your chest, bench don't count.
You get a red light.
Yeah.
I also want to mention that if you have an unusual slow descent, that's okay. As long as you do that, that's what you do. That's what your body understands how to do. That's what it's prepared to do. Then you don't need to change that. If you come down with 135 like this, and 225 and 315 and 405, all the same way, that's fine. That's what you're used to do. So I'm not telling you to change that. Make sure you know that. It's just one of those things that when you start changing an exercise, that unusual slow descent is a total change in exercise. It's no longer a bench press. It's a negative. And you don't come up with a negative. You do a negative and then somebody pulls it up off of you. Just like when you take a max effort bench and you bring it down really slow, somebody has to get it up off of you because you're not going to press it. So, the next thing that we've talked about, the down bar speed, is the up bar speed. And everybody knows that you're supposed to push fast on the bench press, but some people don't push fast. They're just like, okay, I'm down here, and then I'm going to start pushing, and then I'm going to slowly lock it out. You got to be violent. That's one of the things I know. Dynamic Effort Day is designed to teach people how to push fast. Not enough people do that, number one, and number two, they don't know how to transfer that dynamic effort that they did on a lightweight to a heavyweight. It's something that you practice a dynamic effort to get your max effort better. That's why you do it. So if you're not transferring it, you might as well not even do it.
No, actually, that's pretty much the same things that I had going through my head that I was thinking about talking about. So I think that pretty much sums up the bar speed. I can't think of anything else that we really need to add to that. So let's go ahead and move on to leg drive. There's a lot of issues I see sometimes with leg drive. I think it's just a lot of people. I know for myself, it took me a little bit to get my leg drive. I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is finding that perfect spot. Because I promise you, once you get your leg drive just right, you'll know.
Your bench will take off.
Take off big time. You'll be hitting a weight that you kind of struggled with a little bit here and there, and And then all of a sudden one day you'll be going for it, you'll come down, touch that chest, and as soon as you go, boom, that leg drive happens just the way it's supposed to, and that weight's just going to fly up. And you're going to be like, oh.
That's what it's supposed to feel like.
That's leg drive.
Yep.
And I think the hardest part about leg drive, I know for me, was at first getting that concept of whenever I would go to drive that leg, I was causing my hips to go up towards the ceiling instead of back towards the rack.
Yeah.
So I think that's the hardest one. And as far as, I've had a lot of people ask if I think there's a better way to set your feet to get your leg drive. Honestly, I don't think there is. It comes down to the person.